The so-called Anti-Establishment Reform Party is planning to implement an establishment punch-down policy, attacking poor and disabled people. Robert Jenrick announced they would slash a whopping £50 billion a year from disabled people and foreign nationals. And this is what Robert Jenrick said in a speech, standing in front of a slogan that says, "Ending Benefits Britain."
A reform government will introduce a welfare to work scheme that will require long-term benefits claimants who are fit to work to provide 20 hours a week of work for their community, organised by their local council. They'll work to clean up high streets and parks, to beautify neglected places, to carry out minor repairs, to staff libraries and community centres, to perform many other tasks from the list that we've published today. We'll also embrace local charities and community groups and ask them to help us and take part. If claimants refuse to participate or fail to show up, they'll face penalties. Let me speak very plainly. If people who are capable of work refuse, then they'll get nothing. That's fair. How can it be that one family on a street with working parents strive, work hard, only to fund the lifestyle of another who chooses not to bother to work at all, who isn't even really looking for a job? This isn't just an aberration, a small number of very isolated cases to be dismissed as a rounding error. It's an epidemic that's been allowed to take hold across our country and has now spread into a full-blown national crisis. My message today, for those taking everyone else for mugs, under a reform government, it's going to stop.
What he said there was a complete utter lie. He says, it's not just a rounding error, it's a national crisis. That is categorically untrue. Okay, according to the government's own data, right, benefit fraud amounts to like 0.3%. It is quite literally a rounding error, but he's fucking lying to propagandize to the people that fraudulently claiming benefits is everywhere and we must crack down. But what Jenrick is proposing there is a policy of slave labour, forcing people to work for less than the legal minimum wage. But notice, right, that they want to cut disability benefits, 20 billion specifically, yet there he is talking about forcing people into underpaid labour. So is he suggesting he wants to force disabled people to do such tasks? I mean, the point of disability benefits is that we as a society pay for some who cannot work. Therefore, they can still have access to basic needs. But not all disabled people on welfare don't work. Many do, and personal independent payments have been a lifeline for many, which of course is being targeted by reform. The party said the plans were aimed at reducing the welfare bill by a quarter, with personal independence payments replaced by another cash benefit that will be restricted to the only gravely and severely challenged. Yet, who judges the gravely ill and severely challenged? Reform will. And their criteria of severely challenged will be different to others. In fact, for decades, the DWP had a different idea. They allowed thousands to die because they declared many to be fit for work when they weren't, leading to their deaths. With reform at the helm, you can expect even harsher criteria. But policy aside, politically, this seems like a really odd move, given that reform constituencies have a high amount of PIP claimants. So if you see here, 15.3% of working age people are on PIP. That's the Clacton constituency. Nigel Farage. Then you've got Sarah Pochin, Lee Anderson, Richard Tice, Robert Jenrick, Swella Braverman. The list goes on. So they represent areas of people who are desperate and who are vulnerable. Lady Cunningham hosted LBC today and got a taste of the backlash.
I do not agree with getting rid of PIP. I am a cancer patient.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I work part-time. Metastatic breast cancer, PALB2 gene carrier, unfair dismissal protection goes, I'm out of a job. I'm out of my home. I'm 57 years old. Got a palliative care husband, 15 different disabilities. He worked for HMRC, government kicked out 10 years ago. Get rid of his PIP. no trips to hospital. He's got liver failure. He's blind. He's epileptic. I can't even get a council property despite having the over-allotted points. How the hell am I supposed to vote for reform?
I'm so sorry.
What's reform going to do for me? Nothing.
Elizabeth, I hear you. And we genuinely care about the people in vulnerable positions like you. It's why we got into politics. And it's not about cutting benefits from people who actually need it. It's about telling those who could work that they should work to protect exactly the benefits for the vulnerable that need it. And I'm so sorry that you're dealing with cancer. It's a very tough time. And you're in Haringey. I'll come and see you, Elizabeth. I'd love to.
I do not agree with...
It's not about cutting benefits from those who actually need it, so she says. But it is. Because even if it's unintentional, right? This is the natural result of means testing. As I mentioned earlier, the DWP has allowed thousands to die. The reality is we have a choice. A comprehensive welfare with a small number of people who fraudulently claim, or crack down on welfare to root out the small number of frauds and kill tens of thousands in the process. I know which one I pick. This is what Isabel Oakeshott had to say about welfare cuts. Can't wait to see how many fit and well universal credit claimants suddenly find work rather than be forced to clean the streets in return for their benefits. Under reform, no more something for nothing. Long overdue. Labour first proposed this under Blair, but chickens. They won't suddenly find work. They die. One of the major reasons for the deaths of 330,000 people were from austerity, and the main driving force was cutting welfare. Now, all of this is performative cruelty. This isn't about saving money. The biggest welfare expenditure is the state pension. If this was truly a cost-cutting exercise, then why don't the party look at pension reform, such as removing the triple lock? Could it be that their base are just older people? But this entire conversation about the entire policy of cutting benefits, which every party has done for decades, is a completely pointless exercise. It doesn't get people into work. So Denmark has higher LFPR, which means labour force participation rates, than the UK. 82.5% of working age people in Denmark are in work, compared to 79.1% in the UK. But this is despite the fact that Denmark generally has more generous welfare payments. There is no correlation to high benefits and high worklessness, something the entire political establishment falsely claims. And in Denmark, the precise opposite is literally true. Ben, we can remember a time early in this year, maybe last year, Reform were on 30% in the polls. For a time, they pretended to court left-wing economic policy. They said they were against the two-child benefit cap. They said they supported steel nationalisation. Then they fully lent into austerity. And as you saw from the statistics of the constituencies, as you saw from that caller towards Leila Cunningham, a lot of people are not going to be happy with these benefit cuts. Why are they doing this?
Well, these are the same fuckers that tried to claim that they were, part of Alarm Clock Britain. They were there for Alarm Clock Britain. Well, the carers who get up to look after their relatives and have to claim carers allowance and depend upon their relatives' PIP allowance, they set their alarm clock in the morning. They get up in the morning as well. They need to survive as well, and there's so much wrong with this story, but it goes so much deeper than just Reform UK. It's part of our sort of national mythos now, as much of our like Arthurian legends, Merlin and King Arthur and Robin Hood are part of our national mythos. The idea that people are falsely claiming benefits is so much part of our national mythos. If you talk to somebody, genuinely, if you talk to the average person about benefits and benefit claimants, they are convinced that they know somebody who has a flat screen TV, has a PS5, and is living the high life because they are on benefits, and they are like, they're very convinced that that person is fraudulently claiming benefits, even though there are almost always things going on there that like There's more to those stories so often. Not saying that fraudulent benefit claimants don't exist. They absolutely do. But the way that it is perpetuated, and it's in our national mythos, so much of this is to do with the press. It's the same press that led to Jason Arday's death. Is the same press that's led to the death of so many people who depend upon the state to survive. Just to give an example, the BBC reported this story about reform, and do you know what the headline was? The headline that they published on X, on Twitter? Reform UK plan would overhaul welfare system with £50 billion in savings. And people rightly pointed out that accepts the framing that reform can find £50 billion in welfare savings, and it also softens it as an overhaul. The reality is, and the BBC have a responsibility to put this sort of stuff in their headlines. PIP in total is £25 billion. To the person, Layla Cunningham saying, well, we won't take it from people who don't need it. How do you subtract 50 billion from 25 billion and not take it from the genuine PIP claimants? That does not make any sense. That doesn't make any sense at all, just on a basic level. But this is the thing. Like you say, a pension is the biggest cost on the welfare budget, but no one will touch it. Least of all reform, who just want the Untermenschen and the asocials, the asocials, to suffer because it gets their base going, right? It's what excites them. It's what gets them out of bed in the morning. It's what floats their boat. But obviously, like, the state pension should be indexed to wage growth so that everybody is incentivized to vote in each other's interests. This is part of keeping us divided. And if working people can't live, pensioners should not be able to live either. Our social contract should bind us together. It's so much to do with the radicalization of the press. It's to do with the radicalization of the over 65 specifically, because this is a policy designed to placate the over 65s. It's of course also designed to placate employers with the idea, hey, you might get some workfare, what's effectively slave labor out of this. But it's so much to do with the over 65s, the radicalization of the over 65s, and the idea that people are just sitting around all day. This national mythos, it needs to end. We need to find a way to destroy this myth that people just sit around on benefits all day, and that is a large part of what's going on, and instead talk about the horrendous state of town centres where businesses can't afford to get started because they can't afford to rent space in the town centre because corporate landlords price them out, and they're priced out. They then, if they're lucky enough to get a spot, there's not enough velocity of money in the economy, by which I mean there's not enough people with spare cash in their pockets to be able to afford the products that people are producing. So those businesses stay there for maybe a year if they're lucky, and then the business just collapses again, and they have to, they have to sell out and sell their business, often to a big corporation, and then the big corporations just get more money. It's all linked to that fundamental problem. Like, that is what's driving unemployment, not people on welfare. And like you say, people on welfare sitting around, it just doesn't bear out with the statistics that we've got from Nordic countries where they have more generous welfare systems. They also have stronger union rights as well, but they have more generous welfare systems, and yet you don't see the levels of unemployment that we're seeing in this country. We're seeing these levels of unemployment because we chose to fuck ourselves with austerity instead of actually investing in the economy when interest rates were low, and actually turning the economy around. You don't cut your way to growth. To put it really simply, and I was thinking about this, I think I was watching an episode of Question Time, and I was thinking about, okay, what would I say if I was sat in this seat? And one of the major things that I want to get across to the audience is, can we please end this fucking myth that the way that you grow in, the way that you grow an economy is by cutting it to the bone and then magically it will start to work. Efficiency savings, all this bullshit. There's so much bullshit. And by the way, it will see a rise in crime, because if people can't afford to live, then it is just a fact that people will turn to crime in order to survive. And I don't mean that in a direct way of like, oh, they'll start stealing bread and stuff. You will see that, but also you'll see gangs start to infiltrate communities because, hey, there are so many more people who are unemployed and willing to run these drugs to the next location than there were a year ago, because so many people are unemployed and so many people just need money, and they need money to survive, especially if you're somebody who has a vulnerable looks after a vulnerable person. You're a carer for a vulnerable person, and so it limits your employment opportunities. Yeah, of course that you're going to take anything you can to get money. I always say that the story of Peaky Blinders, people watch Peaky Blinders and they're like, oh, they're fucking cool. Tommy Shelby, fucking them up. The whole like razor blades in the hat thing. And it's like, you guys missed the message. The message there was, if you let communities rot and you leave communities to rot, then you allow like crime to take over those communities, and those communities aren't governed by democratic consensus. They're governed by crime and by gangs. I could say so much more on this, but I'm going to leave it at that because I'm aware of the time.
Well, I mean, the anti-benefit propaganda has been the most damaging thing to society, because at the beginning, what you said is the average person who thinks that people are just fraudulently claiming or sitting on their ass is so widespread, it almost feels impossible to overcome that narrative. And this is something from Blair. This is Blair's legacy, which is very funny how, for reform, they think the establishment started with Tony Blair. Okay. I would say that actually the political establishment, I mean, it's kind of a loose term in a way, if you think about it. Like, where did the political establishment start? I mean, it didn't start anywhere, did it? But I would say like the consensus of politics started in the 80s under Margaret Thatcher. But, Yusuf and Farage would say, oh, it started under Blair. Yet the irony here, though, is that they're parroting exactly what Blair did. Remember, it was under New Labour that pushed the idea of welfare queens. So we've had this 20-year-long propaganda machine, if not a bit longer, of telling people that actually there are too many people on benefits. And the problem is we keep cutting and cutting and cutting, and there's no more to cut. There's nothing left to cut. You're right as well in saying about how the BBC, they're framing by saying, oh, these are welfare savings. It's very, very hard, though, to counter-narrative that, to offer a counter-narrative, because the very simplistic argument is too many people on benefits, we're spending too much money, let's just cut it. Now, of course, there's no such thing as savings when it comes to austerity, because where are the savings being made? Sure, you might spend less on welfare, but when there's less people in work, when there's less people with opportunity, when people have less money, the economy shrinks, so it actually costs more. For example, means testing actually costs more because you have to design a system in which you decide who gets what. That's actually very costly. When it comes to the DWP, like 90% of the outcomes where they declared so many people fit for work, they went to court and found that actually they were incorrect in their assessment. That all costs money. That no one's actually making any savings here. The deficit goes somewhere else. And when you cut benefits, the deficit is on the rest of society, everybody. But that's not important to people like Reform. They don't particularly understand that, but they also don't really care. And by the way, just to finish off, if these right-wing parties truly cared about employment, but also believe that everyone should sort of do their bit, because I'm not against the idea of the collective idea that we all do our bit, whether it's, cleaning roads, where it's bin pickups, litter pickering. I think that's quite good, isn't it? But the way in which they see it is, we're going to force people to do it on benefits, okay? Well, actually, if they really care, then why wouldn't they support a federal jobs guarantee? Something which I think would fundamentally change this economy, which is that as a guaranteed job for you, provided by the state, but it's also high quality job, so it's got really good benefits and it's highly paid. So if you want someone to say, do you know what, let's go do a bin run because the council's not doing it properly, or let's go clean the streets, offer someone a 35, 40 grand a year job doing it. That solves the problem. You get someone into employment and they got enough money to contribute to the economy, and it has the better effect. It stops the race to the bottom, because once you had a federal jobs guarantee, the market and private companies have to then compete with a £40,000 a year job rather than a £200 week benefit scheme. Like, this would transform the economy, but they're not interested in that.
It's always your guarantee, your insurance against your employer. If you can turn around and say, well, I can survive for a bit on unemployment benefits. I can survive, so I don't have to take your abuse. And by the way, this abuse can be extreme. In some situations, this can be literal sexual abuse, that some employers perpetrate when they are in positions of extreme power disparities. And people forget, like, that welfare, that is your insurance against your employer. Like, every single time, it's worth bearing in mind that is your insurance against your employer. Don't knock it, because you might need it someday. And in a world where the AI is rising, more and more people are probably going to end up on some sort of welfare support and going, oh, it's not there for me when I need it. Why is it not there for me when I need it? It's because of these sorts of narratives, right?
Well, I just want to address someone's comment. Obviously, we don't have a federal Britain. The federal jobs guarantee is a thing, and it's being proposed in America. Obviously, I'm just calling for a British version, maybe just a British jobs guarantee. But I think that part of it is a clever way in which to support the big business, because obviously, if you have a very poor welfare state, very low paying welfare state, then what you're doing is basically saying that, well, you're coerced into low paid jobs, right? I mean, capitalism has a coercive nature. Like, you are literally coerced into working. To counter that narrative of the coercion of capitalism and markets is to make sure there's a safety net. So if we were to have far higher benefits, then yeah, because I'm absolutely okay with someone saying, do you know what? Right, I fucking hate this job. You treat me like shit. I'm going to go on benefits for 2 months. Maybe I need to, reskill, learn something else, but I can survive on that. And that actually means that, one, you have more freedom to choose which job you're in. I don't like this idea that everyone has to be in some kind of employment. Well, what about working for minimum wage and it's, socially useless job? I mean, is that good for society? No, it's not. But also, it forces businesses to compete for that labor. So I'm fully in favor of having like a benefit system which is very well paid, and people actually have a bit more of a choice, and we don't penalize these people, because it would tell businesses, do you know what? Get your fucking act together. Offer good quality, high-paid jobs to get someone off benefits into these jobs.
Sorry, just
okay, go on. Quickly finish off.
The idea that capitalism benefits from this is to some degree true. There is some truth in the idea that capitalists, the bosses, benefit, and you might think, oh, well, that means the businesses are benefiting. Not necessarily.
No, yeah, of course.
I think that there are socially beneficial forms of like capitalism. Like, I'm anti-capitalist, but I recognize that a flower shop opening up in my town center, or a bakery opening up in my town center, even if it's a capitalist business, I recognize that is so much more beneficial than those places remaining empty to benefit benefit the capitalist class, so to speak. And the idea of having people who look after our communities and who are paid to look after our communities properly, and properly investing in communities, making sure that, I was in Spain recently. Spain, they actually clean the streets. Like, you actually see them going out. And like, I'd come out of spend a night in a bar, come out, and the ground would be wet, and I'd be like, it definitely hasn't rained. Not in this weather. It hasn't rained in ages, and it's because they go around and they actually clean. They wash the streets, and it's so weird seeing that in Spain, because they do it to such a high degree. Obviously, they don't do it everywhere, but they do it to such a high degree, and that sort of thing is the thing that does attract businesses into those areas, because actually businesses do, if they go into an area and they see that it is a nicer looking area, they are more likely to plop their business there and try to make money there. And if they do, and if the infrastructure is good, because that's another thing that could be, these sorts of federal job guarantees could be used for, then businesses also invest in those areas. There is a very strong correlation between infrastructural investment and business investment. What I'm saying is, capitalists are fucking shit at capitalism, and they should just let us do it.